My name is Charity, and at 27 years old, I never imagined I'd be standing in my childhood home, suitcase in hand, staring at my father as he spoke the words that changed everything. Growing up in Minneapolis with my younger brother Kyle, I always sensed there was favoritism, but nothing could have prepared me for that day. Dad made it clear. I existed to work while Kyle deserved to enjoy life. What they never fully grasped was just how much they depended on me financially. Before I explain how it all fell apart, let me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever had to stand up to family inequality, hit that like button. I grew up in Oakage, a middle-class neighborhood in Minneapolis. Our house was modest but comfortable, a two-story with blue siding and white trim that my father, Robert, took pride in maintaining. Dad worked long hours as a construction manager for a local company, coming home with stories about building projects across the city. Mom, Gloria, worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, though she always said she was just helping out, not pursuing a real career. Then there was Kyle, my brother, 3 years younger than me, and clearly the favorite from the moment he was born. I still remember the day they brought him home from the hospital. My father beamed with pride, carrying that blue bundle through the door. "Look, Charity," he said, his voice full of awe. "This is your baby brother. One day he's going to do great things." Even at 4 years old, I noticed something in the way he looked at Kyle, something I'd never seen when he looked at me. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me, but their love for Kyle always seemed to shine brighter, like the difference between a desk lamp and stadium floodlights. The unequal treatment became more obvious as we grew up. Every Christmas and birthday, Kyle got the newest toys, video games, or sports gear, while I received practical gifts like clothes or discount store books. When I mentioned this once at age 9, my mother simply said, "Girls are easier to please, sweetheart. Boys need more encouragement." Despite the lack of parental support, I excelled academically. By middle school, I was consistently earning straight A's, staying up late to study, joining academic clubs. My report cards would go on the fridge for a day or two before being replaced by Kyle's soccer schedule or a photo from one of his games. "Your sister is the smart one," my father would tell people, but it always sounded like an afterthought, not a real achievement. When Kyle had a game, my parents rearranged their schedules to be there, cheering from the sidelines and taking him for ice cream afterward, win or lose. When I won the science fair in 8th grade, neither of them came. Mom had a hair appointment she couldn't reschedule, and Dad had to watch Kyle practice in the backyard. "We're so proud of you, honey," Mom said when I showed her my blue ribbon. "But these things come easily to you. Kyle has to work harder for his accomplishments." The irony of that statement didn't hit me until years later. High school brought even starker differences in how we were treated. At 16, I got my first job at a local grocery store, working weekends and summers to save for college. Kyle, meanwhile, was encouraged to focus only on sports. "Your brother has natural talent," Dad would say whenever I suggested Kyle might benefit from a part-time job. "We can't distract him from that potential." My dream was to become an accountant. I loved working with numbers, finding satisfaction in the precision and logic of financial systems. When I talked about college applications during my junior year, my parents nodded vaguely. "Community college is practical," my mother suggested. "You could live at home and keep helping out." For Kyle, they discussed Division I schools with sports programs no matter the tuition. "We'll figure it out," Dad assured him. "Your talent deserves the right showcase." The summer before my senior year, I overheard a conversation between my parents that made everything clear. They were on the back porch thinking I was still at work. "Kyle's coach thinks he could get a partial scholarship," my father said, excitement in his voice. "But we'll need to cover the rest." "What about Charity's college fund?" my mother asked. There was a pause before my father responded. "She's always been independent. She'll understand that Kyle needs this opportunity more. She can get student loans or work through school. She's good at working." That was the first time I heard it stated so plainly. I was good at working. Kyle was good at enjoying opportunities. That's how they saw it. And I did understand, just not the way they expected. I understood that I would have to forge my own path. That night, I sat at my desk and mapped out a plan. I would apply for every scholarship I could find. I would work extra shifts. I would make my own way because no one else was going to make it for me. By graduation, I had secured enough scholarships and grants to attend our state university without touching the college fund that had apparently been reassigned to Kyle. My parents seemed surprised but relieved. "We always knew you'd figure it out," my mother said, as if my success was a given that required no support. "You've always been so capable," my father added. "See, everything works out. Now we can focus on getting Kyle into the right program." That summer, while working 60-hour weeks between 2 jobs to save extra money for expenses, I watched Kyle sleep until noon, play video games, and attend training camps my parents paid for. When I mentioned the disparity, my father gave me a look I'd come to know all too well. "You have different paths," he said firmly. "You're building character. Kyle is building a future." What they didn't realize was that I was building a future too, just not one they had chosen for me, and not one that would ultimately include supporting them. State University wasn't my dream school, but it had a solid accounting program and was affordable with my scholarships and part-time work. I moved into a tiny apartment with my roommate Sophia, who quickly became the supportive presence I'd never had at home. While most freshmen were adjusting to freedom and going to parties, I was juggling a full course load with 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and another 15 waiting tables near campus. Meanwhile, Kyle secured a partial sports scholarship to a private university 2 hours away, with my parents covering the rest. 3 weeks into my first semester, I got a call from my mother. "Charity, honey, we're a little short this month. The payment for Kyle's housing was higher than we expected. Could you send home $200 to help with utilities?" I stared at my phone in disbelief. I was barely making ends meet myself, eating ramen and using the campus shuttle to save on gas. "Mom, I don't have extra money. I'm paying for my own books and food." Her voice cooled. "We've given up a lot to support you kids. Your father and I thought you'd be more understanding about family helping family." The guilt trip worked that time. I picked up extra shifts, skipped buying my economics textbook, and sent the money. But that first request opened the floodgates. Soon, helping with utilities became a monthly expectation. When their car needed repairs, when the water heater broke, when property taxes were due, the call always came to me. Sophia noticed the toll it was taking. One night, after I hung up from another money call with my mother, she confronted me. "This isn't normal, Charity. Parents are supposed to help their children through college, not the other way around." "They help Kyle," I said reflexively, then realized how that sounded. Sophia's eyes widened. "And that doesn't strike you as messed up? Why aren't they asking him for money?" "He needs to focus on sports and school," I repeated, my father's words hollow even to me. "And you don't? You're carrying a 4.0 while working 35 hours a week. When do you get to just be a college student?" I had no answer. The truth was, I'd never been allowed to just be anything. I was defined by what I could provide, not who I was. During my sophomore year, Kyle lost his sports scholarship due to poor grades. Rather than facing consequences, my parents absorbed the cost and increased their financial demands on me. That Christmas, sitting in our living room watching Kyle unwrap a new gaming system while I got a discount store sweater, I realized nothing had changed since childhood. "We're so proud of your grades," my mother said, noticing my expression. But Kyle needed a pick-me-up after a rough semester. By junior year, I had moved up to assistant manager at the restaurant, which helped cover the increasing demands from home. I was exhausted, constantly falling asleep over textbooks, surviving on coffee and determination. But I maintained my GPA and started applying for internships, knowing that building my resume was my only path to freedom. Kyle dropped out of college entirely that year, moving back home where my parents welcomed him with open arms. "College isn't for everyone," my father said. "Kyle needs time to find his path." When I graduated with honors in accounting the following year, my parents attended the ceremony but left early because Kyle had a tryout for a local amateur sports team. My graduation dinner was postponed and eventually forgotten. The framed photo in their living room wasn't of me in my cap and gown. It was of Kyle at his high school graduation 3 years earlier. Through networking at a campus job fair, I landed an entry-level position at Anderson Financial, a respected accounting firm in Minneapolis. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it offered health benefits and growth potential. Most importantly, it was a step toward independence. With student loans coming due and little savings despite years of working, I made the difficult decision to move back home temporarily. Just for 6 months, I told myself. Just until I can save for a security deposit and first month's rent. My parents seemed pleased with the arrangement, though not for the reasons I'd hoped. "It'll be so nice having you contribute to the household properly," my mother said, as if I hadn't been sending them money throughout college. Within a week of starting my new job, the expectations became clear. My entire first paycheck went to catching up on household bills. My second covered groceries and property taxes. By the third month, I was paying half the mortgage while Kyle continued living cost-free, spending his days playing video games and talking about nebulous sports opportunities. "Your brother is networking," my father would say when I pointed out that Kyle rarely left his room except to raid the refrigerator I stocked. "He's building his brand on those games. That's how athletes get noticed these days." The 6-month timeline I set stretched to 9 months. Then a year, as every dollar I tried to save found its way into my parents' hands. Despite the financial drain at home, I excelled at Anderson Financial. Numbers had always made sense to me in a way people often didn't, and I found satisfaction in balancing ledgers and identifying efficiencies. My supervisor, Nancy, took notice. "You have a real gift," she told me after I completed a complex audit ahead of schedule. "If you keep this up, you won't be entry-level for long." She was right. By the 18-month mark, I received my first promotion to junior accountant with a modest salary increase. I should have been ecstatic, but the news was met with an immediate increase in my expected household contribution. "That's wonderful, honey," my mother said when I announced my promotion at dinner. "Now you can take over the car insurance payments for both vehicles." My father nodded. "And the roof will need replacing next year. We should start setting aside for that." Not once did either suggest my increased earnings might mean I could finally move out. At 25, Kyle had yet to hold a job longer than 2 weeks. He briefly worked at a sporting goods store but quit because the schedule interfered with his training. He tried giving private coaching lessons but stopped because parents didn't understand his unique approach. Meanwhile, he continued living rent-free, eating food I paid for, using utilities I covered, and occasionally borrowing money he never repaid. "I'll pay you back when I get signed," he'd say with an easy smile, as if a professional contract was just around the corner. The resentment grew inside me like a dense, heavy stone. Each morning as I dragged myself out of bed at 5:30 for work, I'd hear Kyle's snores, knowing he wouldn't rise until past noon. Each evening, returning exhausted, I'd find evidence of his day: dirty dishes, food left out, video game controllers strewn across the couch. "Could you ask Kyle to clean up after himself?" I asked my mother one evening after finding the kitchen in disarray for the 3rd time that week. She looked surprised. "He's been training hard today. You know how he gets when he's focused. It's easier if we just take care of it." We meaning me, of course. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Jackson Moore, a fellow accountant who had joined the firm around the same time, had become a friend. During a lunch break, I found myself venting about my home situation. "So basically," Jackson summarized after listening, "you're working 60 hours a week between your job and home responsibilities, paying most household expenses while your brother contributes nothing, and your parents enable him." Put so bluntly, it sounded absurd. "They're family," I said weakly. "Family helps family." Jackson set down his sandwich and looked me in the eyes. "Charity, that's not family helping family. That's you being exploited by the people who should be supporting you." No one had ever named it so clearly before. Exploitation. The word rattled in my head for days. With Jackson's perspective opening my eyes, I decided to have a calm, rational discussion with my parents about fairness. I practiced what I would say, focusing on solutions rather than accusations. I even created a spreadsheet showing household expenses and suggested a more equitable division. I chose a Sunday evening after a dinner I had cooked and would later clean up. "I'd like to talk about household expenses," I began, sliding my spreadsheet across the table. "I've been covering about 80% of the bills, and I think we need a more balanced approach." My father barely glanced at it. "We're family, not roommates. We don't nickel and dime each other." "I'm not trying to nickel and dime anyone," I explained, "but I can't save for my own future at this rate. I think Kyle could contribute something now that he's an adult." My mother looked offended. Your brother is pursuing his dreams. That takes dedication and support. I have dreams too, I said quietly. I'd like to have my own place someday. Maybe go back for my master's degree. My father waved his hand dismissively. There's plenty of time for that later. Right now this family needs your help. Kyle needs to focus on his opportunities without distractions. Opportunities that never seem to materialize, I muttered, immediately regretting it. That's a terrible thing to say, my mother gasped. Just because you settled for an ordinary job doesn't mean Kyle should limit himself. Settled. As if my career, the one I worked incredibly hard for, was some consolation prize. This isn't about limiting Kyle, I tried again. It's about everyone contributing fairly. You're being dramatic, my father concluded, standing up. And selfish. This conversation is over. As I cleared the dishes that night, watching Kyle return to his video games without offering to help, I realized Jackson was right. I wasn't part of a supportive family, I was enabling a toxic pattern. The week everything came to a head was already stressful. Anderson Financial was conducting a major audit for our biggest client, and I was putting in 12-hour days. Nancy had hinted my performance could lead to another promotion, so I was determined to deliver exceptional work despite my exhaustion. After a grueling Thursday, I arrived home past 8 p.m., dreaming of a hot shower in bed. Instead, I walked into chaos. Music blared. Empty pizza boxes and beer cans littered every surface. The smell of marijuana hung in the air. In the center was Kyle, surrounded by disheveled friends playing video games on the large television I had paid for. What is going on? I asked, my voice barely audible over the noise. Kyle glanced up. Oh, hey sis. Just having some of the guys over. There's no pizza left, but help yourself to a beer. I noticed something on the coffee table that made my blood run cold. Is that my credit card? One of Kyle's friends looked uncomfortable, but Kyle just shrugged. Yeah, we needed food and beer. I'll pay you back. With what money? I snapped, snatching the card. Chill out, Kyle said, turning back to his game. Dad said it was fine. Of course he did. My father had given Kyle permission to use my card without even a courtesy text. The familiar anger rose, but alongside it was something new. Determination. Everyone who doesn't live here needs to leave, I announced, walking to the TV and switching it off. There were groans, but something in my expression must have communicated I wasn't to be argued with. Kyle's friends shuffled out, leaving him slouched on the couch, glaring. What is your problem? He demanded. They're my guests, and this is my home too. This place is a disaster. You used my credit card without permission, and I've had a hellish week. Whatever, Kyle muttered. You're always dramatizing everything. The dismissive phrase, so similar to my father's, ignited something in me. I was tired of being dismissed, used, the responsible one who never got to enjoy life. Clean this up, I said firmly. All of it. Tonight. And we're discussing that credit card charge at dinner tomorrow. Kyle rolled his eyes but didn't argue further. Too exhausted to push more, I retreated to my room, setting a reminder to check my statement. The next day revealed Kyle and his friends had charged over $300 to my card. Money I couldn't easily spare. The final straw. I decided dinner that night would be the moment of truth. I would set firm boundaries. If they couldn't respect them, I would make different living arrangements. When I arrived home Friday evening, I was surprised to find my mother cooking. Special occasion? I asked cautiously. Your father and I want to discuss something with you, she replied, her tone neutral. I had a sinking feeling. Dinner was strained. My father complained about work. Kyle was sullen. Before I could bring up the credit card, my father cleared his throat. Your mother and I have been talking. Kyle has an opportunity to attend a sports training camp in Florida next month. It could be his big break. I waited. The camp costs $4,000 plus airfare and accommodations, my mother continued. We think it's worth the investment. And you want me to pay for it? I stated flatly. We're family, my father said, as if that explained everything. We support each other's dreams. What about my dreams? I asked, the words escaping before I could filter them. When does anyone in this family support what I want? My father's expression darkened. We put a roof over your head. We raised you. Now you have a good job because of the values we instilled in you. Values like working myself to exhaustion while Kyle got everything handed to him. I couldn't stop now. Years of resentment found voice. Like using my credit card without permission for a party. Kyle looked offended. Dad said I could. It's my card. My money. Money I earn working 60-hour weeks while you play games all day. My mother tried to intervene. Charity, you're overreacting. It was just a small charge. $300 isn't small to me. Not when I'm already paying for everything else. That's enough, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You live in this house. You follow our rules. Your brother has a chance at greatness. Are you really so selfish you'd stand in his way? Is it selfish to want my own money for my own life? I demanded. Is it selfish to expect a 25-year-old man to support himself instead of leeching off his sister? Kyle stood up, face red. I'm not a leech. I'm working towards something bigger than your boring accounting job. At least I have a job, I shot back. At least I contribute. What have you contributed in the last 7 years? Enough. My father's voice cut through like a thunderclap. When he spoke again, it was cold and deliberate. This is how it is in this family. You have to work while your brother enjoys his opportunities. It's that simple. And if you don't like it, get out. The room went silent. My mother didn't contradict him. She nodded slightly, backing him with her silence. In that moment, something crystallized. This wasn't temporary. This was the fundamental dynamic stated explicitly. I would always be expected to sacrifice. Kyle would always be entitled to enjoy. It was, as my father said, that simple. I looked at their faces. My father's righteous anger, my mother's defensive posture. Kyle's entitled sneer. They saw me as a resource, not a person. Great, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Then I'll leave and you can pay your own bills. It's that simple. The stunned silence was almost satisfying. They hadn't expected me to call their bluff. You don't mean that, my mother said, uncertainty in her voice. Where would you go? Anywhere better than where I'm neither appreciated nor respected, I replied, standing up. I'll be out by the end of the weekend. Now hold on, my father backpedaled, realizing the financial implications. Let's not be hasty. We can discuss this like adults. We are discussing it like adults, I said. You've made your position clear. Now I'm making mine. I'm done being the family ATM. I walked away, ignoring their calls. There was nothing left to say. That night I made several calls. First to Sophia, my college roommate. She offered her spare room without hesitation. I've been telling you to leave that toxic situation for years. Stay as long as you need. Second, to my landlord. I explained I was moving out and asked for documentation of my rental payments. There was an awkward pause. Miss Miller, he said slowly, we don't have you listed as a tenant. The only names on the lease are Robert and Gloria Miller. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it stung. Despite paying rent, I had never been officially acknowledged, just another way they kept me contributing without proper status. The third call was to Jackson. I hadn't planned to involve him, but I needed someone who understood the professional side. Do you need help moving? He asked immediately. I have a truck. By morning I had packed my personal belongings, clothes, books, mementos, my laptop, professional documents. Everything else, despite my financial contributions, I left behind. Let them see how much I had been providing. My parents hovered anxiously, alternating guilt trips and negotiation attempts. You're tearing this family apart, my mother said tearfully. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me lately? I asked calmly. Name one sacrifice you've made for me in the past 5 years. She couldn't answer. My father tried reason. Let's be reasonable. We can work out a fair arrangement. We already tried that discussion, I reminded him. You shut it down and told me to get out. I'm just following your instructions. Kyle mostly stayed in his room, emerging once to ask if I was seriously leaving over a few $100s. No, I told him. I'm leaving because this family sees me as nothing but a paycheck, and I deserve better. He rolled his eyes and retreated, probably assuming I'd changed my mind. Jackson arrived with his truck around noon. We loaded my belongings efficiently. Within an hour, I was ready to leave the house I had helped maintain and pay for but had never truly been mine. Standing on the front porch, I faced my parents one last time. I've left a spreadsheet on the kitchen table showing all the bills I've been paying and when they're due. You might want to adjust your budget accordingly. My mother's face crumpled. You can't just leave us with all these expenses. We can't afford everything without you. You should have thought of that before taking me for granted for so many years, I replied, no longer feeling the guilt. Maybe Kyle can get a job. As we drove away, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anxiety, and underneath growing pride. I had stood up for myself, set a boundary, and followed through. The financial reality hit my family quickly. 3 days after I moved out, my father called. The electricity bill is due. We're a little short. Can you help just this once? No, I said simply. That's no longer my responsibility. Similar calls came about the water bill, cable, credit card. Each time my answer was the same, no. About a week later, Kyle called, anger in his voice. Thanks a lot. Dad's making me get a job at Burger World. Do you know how humiliating that is? Welcome to the real world, I replied. Most people work for a living. But what about my training? My opportunities? You can train after work like the rest of the world. Or before work. Or on your days off. This is all your fault, he said bitterly. Everything was fine until you freaked out. Everything was fine for you, I corrected. It was never fine for me. My mother's approach was more emotional. Her calls and texts were filled with guilt. I can't sleep worrying about bills. Is this how you treat the woman who gave birth to you? We gave you everything growing up. A beautiful home, clothes, food. How can you be so ungrateful? I didn't point out that providing basics isn't exceptional parenting deserving of lifelong servitude. Instead, I held firm. I'm sorry you're struggling, but I'm not coming back to an exploitative situation. Living with Sophia was a revelation. We split expenses evenly, took turns cooking and cleaning. When I contributed, it was acknowledged and reciprocated. It was mutual respect and fairness. About a month after I left, my father invited me to lunch. He looked older, the lines in his face deeper. We miss you, he said after we ordered. Do you miss me or my paycheck? I asked. He flinched but didn't deny it. Things have been difficult. We've had to make adjustments. I had to make adjustments my entire adult life to support this family, I pointed out. Now it's someone else's turn. Kyle got a job, he admitted reluctantly. He's not happy, but he's working 20 hours a week. Good for him. Your mother had to increase her hours. I picked up weekend work. I nodded but offered no sympathy. These were normal adult responsibilities. We may have been unfair to you, he finally conceded, though the words seemed difficult. Taken you for granted. It wasn't full acknowledgement, but it was something. A crack in the wall of denial. Yes, you were unfair, I agreed. And if we're going to have any relationship moving forward, that needs to change. We parted with no promises. Just a small acknowledgement that the old dynamic was broken. The 6 months after leaving were transformative. Without the financial drain and emotional burden, I thrived. I found my own apartment, decorated to my taste, paid for with money I earned and chose to spend on myself. I started saving for my master's degree. At work, freed from constant exhaustion, my performance improved. Nancy noted the change. You've always been dedicated, but lately there's a spark. Whatever changes you've made, they're working. I received another promotion, to full accountant with a significant raise. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family would have seen this as an opportunity to extract more support. My relationship with Jackson deepened. He had been there during my hardest transition, offering support without judgment. Our first official date was to a financial planning seminar. Boring to some, perfect for us. To financial independence, he toasted at dinner afterward. And personal independence, I added. I maintained limited contact with my family. They had stopped asking for money directly, though hints still slipped in. The washing machine is making a strange noise, my mother would say. Such an expensive repair ahead. I'd commiserate without offering help. That's tough. Appliance repairs can be costly. Kyle and I barely spoke. From what I gathered, he continued working at the fast food place, gradually increasing his hours. Part of me felt sad about the distance, but another part recognized our relationship had never been built on mutual respect. About 4 months after moving out, I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Linda Ross, who specialized in family dynamics. "What you're describing is a classic golden child and scapegoat dynamic," she explained. "Your brother was designated the family's hope for glory. You were assigned the role of supporter. Often it stems from the parents' own unresolved issues or unfulfilled dreams. These insights didn't excuse their behavior, but they helped me contextualize it. I wasn't wrong for wanting fairness." At the 6-month mark, I received a surprising text from Kyle. "Can we talk in person?" We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. He looked different, more mature. He was in his fast food uniform, having come from work. "You look good," he said awkwardly. "Happy." "I am," I confirmed. "Happier than I've been in a long time." He nodded, fidgeting with his cup. "I get it now. Why you left. This was unexpected." "You do?" "Yeah. Once I started working, paying bills, dealing with adult stuff you always handled, I realized how much you were doing, how much I took for granted." It was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard him say. "It's been rough," he continued. "Mom and Dad had to downsize. We're in a smaller house now. Dad's car got repossessed." I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly replaced by resolve. These weren't consequences I created. They were the results of financial realities my parents had avoided. "I'm sorry things have been difficult," I said sincerely. "But everyone needs to contribute. That's how adult life works." "I know that now," Kyle admitted. "I should have known sooner." We talked for nearly 2 hours, more honestly than ever. He shared his realization that his sports career wasn't realistic. I shared my resentment at being taken for granted. As we parted, Kyle gave me a small envelope. Inside was $300 in cash. "For the credit card," he explained. "It took me a while to save, but better late than never." It wasn't about the money, it was the acknowledgement, the small act of responsibility. The following weekend, I agreed to a family dinner at a neutral restaurant, the first time all 4 of us were together since I left. The tension was palpable. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking. We may not have been entirely fair in how we treated you compared to Kyle." It was as close to an apology as I'd get. "No, you weren't fair," I agreed, not letting him off easily. "You treated me like an ATM and Kyle like a prince." My mother flinched. "We never meant to make you feel undervalued." "Intention doesn't change impact," I said. "The impact was that I felt exploited and unappreciated for years." I set clear boundaries moving forward. No financial support, no guilt, no manipulation. I would participate as an equal, not a servant. "If these terms aren't acceptable, we'll need distance for my well-being." They agreed, though likely out of necessity more than understanding. The power dynamic had shifted. As I drove home that night, I felt a mix of emotions. Love despite flaws, sadness for the supportive parents I never had, hope for a healthier relationship, and underneath, profound peace with my decision to prioritize my well-being after a lifetime of putting others first. 1 year after walking out, I stood in my own living room, surveying what I had built. My apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was entirely mine. The journey hadn't been easy, nights of doubt, loneliness, persistent guilt, but each month proved my decision right. My career flourished. The promotion to senior accountant came with a raise that let me start evening classes toward my master's. My relationship with Jackson deepened into a partnership of equals. He moved into the apartment next door. A compromise between living together and maintaining independence. "I'm proud of you," he told me one evening on my balcony. The hardest lesson was overcoming the guilt instilled since childhood. The belief that putting my needs first was selfish. Dr. Ross helped me see that self-care isn't selfish. It's survival. "Think of it like oxygen masks on a plane," she said. "You have to secure your own before helping others." Establishing boundaries let me discover my identity outside the caretaker role. I joined a hiking club, took a painting class, volunteered teaching financial literacy to teens. I found I was more than a responsible worker. I was a whole person with interests, talents, and dreams. The most profound change was internal. The constant resentment quieted, replaced by calm determination to build relationships on mutual respect, not obligation. I no longer felt responsible for my family's poor choices. I could love them without sacrificing myself. As I finished my master's and considered next steps, I felt a freedom that had eluded me most of my adult life. The freedom to choose based on my desires, not others' needs. The future stretched before me not as a burden, but as a landscape of possibility. Sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and others, is breaking toxic patterns that keep everyone trapped. My family might never fully understand the gift I gave them by refusing to enable their dysfunction, but I understood. And ultimately that was enough. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more honest conversations about family dynamics and personal growth. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their well-being. Remember, sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing a new path forward. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you the courage to stand firm in your own worth, no matter who tries to diminish it.